Welcome to Next Gen Manufacturing Nexus. Today, we're pulling back the curtain on the unsung heroes of, well, basically everything. These are the people who keep our tech working and our factories humming. They're the architects of automation, and trust me, without them, our world would literally grind to a halt. So let's dive in.
Okay, that sounds pretty dramatic, right? But seriously, think about it for a second. Every single system we rely on, from the phone in your pocket to the entire global supply chain, it's all unbelievably complex. And that complexity makes it fragile. One tiny failure can snowball into a massive system-wide problem.
I mean, we've all been there. Your favorite app just crashes out of nowhere. A website you need is down. Some critical piece of software decides to just bug out. In the world we live in now, these aren't just little annoyances, they're major roadblocks.
And hey, this isn't just a digital problem. The physical world is just as tricky. Behind every product you own, there's a super sophisticated production line. And when one little sensor fails, or a robot arm is just a millimeter off, the whole thing can just stop, dead.
But here's the cool point. For every problem, there's always a problem solver. A whole new kind of engineer has stepped up to fight this fragility head-on. These are pros who live right at the crossroads of code, machines, and really complex systems.
So, who are these people exactly? They go by a few different names, but they're all on the same mission: to build systems that actually work, systems that are reliable, efficient, and, you guessed it, automated.
So on the software side of things, you've got the SDET. That's a software development engineer and test. The easiest way to think about them, they're developers, but their final product is quality. They don't just find bugs, they build these incredibly smart automated systems to stop those bugs from ever getting to you.
Then, in the physical world, you run into the Mechatronics Engineer. And this role is a wild mix of skills. They're blending the precision of mechanical engineering with the brains of electrical and computer engineering. They're the ones creating the smart machines we see everywhere, from giant factory robots to self-driving cars.
And kind of gluing both of those worlds together is the automation engineer. These are the experts who take all those smart software ideas and apply them to real-world technical processes. They build the systems that save companies an insane amount of time and money, creating this invisible infrastructure that powers everything.
But here's what's really fascinating. These roles aren't totally separate anymore. They're all starting to blend together. The modern automation expert is a hybrid. You've got to speak code, understand the physics of a machine, and have a sharp eye for making processes better. It's a really powerful and pretty rare combination of skills, and that means they are in huge demand.
So, what's a day in the life actually look like for one of these engineers? Well, it's this really dynamic mix of deep thinking and getting your hands dirty. Let's take a peek. If you're more on the software side, your day probably kicks off with a team huddle to figure out what's blocking progress. Then, you're diving deep into the code, writing automation scripts, hunting for bugs, digging through logs to find the real root of a problem, and then, of course, documenting everything so the whole team knows what's up. But it's not all keyboards and code, not by a long shot. For the engineers working with physical machines, a big part of the day is literally hands-on. Preventative maintenance is everything. It could be a simple daily checklist, Cleaning sensors, making sure air pressure is right, giving the machinery a quick visual inspection to spot trouble before it starts.
Okay, so the technical side is tough for sure, but the job isn't just about code and machines. There's this whole other layer, the human element. Let's just say there's a political landscape that these engineers have to be really, really smart about navigating.
And this right here, this just says it all. The job description sounds great, collaborate with teams, but the reality? Your job is to find the mistakes in other people's work. And when a deadline is breathing down everyone's neck and your automated test finds a major bug, suddenly you're the bad guy. And things can get very political very fast. Now listen up, because this is some seriously valuable advice from someone who's been through it. This is a huge red flag, a classic bait and switch. A company wants to hire someone with a developer's brain, but they only want to pay for a manual tester. It's a total career trap, and it pretty much guarantees you'll never have time to build the cool automation stuff you were hired for.
So how do you deal with all this? It really comes down to knowing your value, because companies are desperate for people with these skills. You have to go into interviews a little skeptical, always looking for those red flags. You have to insist that your test code gets reviewed, just like any other code. And, maybe most importantly, you can't fix a toxic culture. If it's bad, you have to be ready to walk away.
Look, I know that last part sounded a little intense, but here's the flip side of the coin. And it is a big one. Even with the challenges, the payoff for being great in these roles is absolutely huge. We're talking about high-demand, really well-paid careers that are literally building the future. Let's just get right to it. the money. The salaries you see here really show how much the market values this unique blend of skills. For a mechatronics engineer, a median salary around 100 grand is pretty standard, with top earners pushing close to 150. The market will pay top dollar for people who can bridge that gap between the physical and digital world.
And this isn't some flash in the pan. The field is growing. As more and more industries rely on automation, the demand for these engineers is set to jump by 8%. So this isn't just a good job for today. It's a solid career path with a really stable, promising future.
But honestly, the paycheck is one thing. The real reward is something else entirely. There is this deep, incredible satisfaction that comes from being the person who makes a ridiculously complex system just work perfectly. You're the one preventing the failures, building stuff that lasts, and making sure the tech people depend on is actually dependable. You're the guardian at the gate. So, yeah, these jobs are tough. They can be political, and they demand a skill set that is incredibly broad. But for the people who can master both the code and the machine, you're not just fixing what's broken, you are actively building a more reliable future for everyone. The only question left is, are you ready to be one of those architects?